Greetings, friends. As part of our presence theme, in this talk, I want to explore the area of presence and listening. And the Center for Action and Contemplation describes that contemplation is the practice of being fully present in heart, mind, and body to what is in a way that deepens awareness, encourages oneness, and strengthens compassion. It's a beautiful description of being fully present. But how often are we fully present with another person? We've not really been taught to value simple presence with an attitude of deep listening. And we wonder, what can I get out of this encounter? How will this person benefit me? How can I show how much I know or how good a listener I am? Alternatively, if the person is in some form of anguish, we wonder, what can I do that's of value, that will help to fix this person's problems? And so we fall into the grooves of giving advice, telling our own stories, or offering some theory of change or other. And this subtle mental strategizing so often happens in the background, and it's so continuous and subtle that we often don't notice it. We've not learned the art and power of the value of simple presence with, listening with an open and non-judgmental heart. Some of the most profound and healing group experiences I've had are what I call communities of brokenness, where at times the realness and vulnerability of what is shared creates a kind of a holy hush, and any words feel like they would do violence to the sacred preciousness of the moment, painful as it may be. In one of these groups, what facilitated the depth and vulnerability was the shared agreement around a clear set of ground rules, such as not giving advice, not bringing in our own stories, and most impactfully, not planning what we were going to say while somebody else was talking, but rather making the choice to be fully in the moment of the listening. And this profoundly opened a healing and vulnerable space beyond what I had imagined possible with a group of strangers from different parts of the world. And I love how Proverbs 18, verse 13 describes that to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. And how often are we doing that? Answering before we've even listened. And how different it is to shift into listening, just listening with a fullness of presence. A spiritual teacher named Gil Fronsdal describes that our inner turmoil can feel like a fist that is tightly curled in woundedness and self-defense. And he describes two approaches you could bring to a tightly closed fist. You could try to forcefully open the fingers one by one, or you could gently cradle that closed fist with a gentle and open palm, encouraging it to unfold in its own time when it feels safe and supported enough. Such a different attitude to bring. And this is the kind of listening environment that we can offer to one another, offering our full, gentle, healing presence, not trying to fix the person or pry them open according to our program of planned vulnerability, but simply being there, open, accepting, gentle, and supportive. The unfolding might not happen in our presence when we're with the person, but could well take place much later. We might not even see it. But the non-judgmental, compassionate presence that we offer has immeasurable value in growing a sense of trust and safety that allows a gradual unfolding and healing to take place. I find the iceberg analogy a fascinating one, and the illusion of asymmetric insight that goes with that. It's a fascinating theory, and it describes that we have a cognitive bias whereby people perceive their knowledge of others to surpass other people's knowledge of them. And there was a study that found that we are generally convinced that what we observe of other people's external behavior is more revealing of them than our own outward behavior reveals about ourselves. And we well know the depths and complexity of our own inner terrain, our struggles, our thoughts, all those things that are not visible to others. We know there's depths and layers and complexity to that. But how quick we are to gloss over other people's suffering and their depths, assuming that the fragments of information that we've gleaned about them give us a full picture of who they are and what they're struggling with. We quickly leap in with our assumptions based on our limited information of what wholeness or well-being would look like for you. Whenever we are with another person, we're on holy ground. There are depths to that person that we cannot begin to fathom. And this invites a sacred listening, where we listen without composing a reply, listening with an attentive, non-judgmental presence, not trying to solve the problem of you, not trying to fix you. And yes, if you're in obvious need, if your foot is caught in a trap, I must free it. If you're hungry, I must give you food. If there's an obvious need, we do respond materially, but we must never kid ourselves that we are the answer to somebody else's wondrous, sacred mystery of a life. We are invited to rather take off our shoes and walk gently, humbly, and reverentially on this sacred ground. Now, I want to take this kind of approach to sacred listening and turn it inward. And another area that is way too underplayed in our general culture is our relationship with our own struggling, wounded selves. How would it be if we brought this kind of deeply sacred listening to our own recurring thoughts and their emotional roots in our bodies, with the same attentive, non-judgmental presence, not getting caught in the loops of trying to solve the problems, but with this open-hearted listening presence? When we don't bring a listening presence to our suffering, we either gloss over it with our platitudes, or we turn on ourselves with criticism and shame, or we get caught up in the suffering and we identify ourselves as that wounded one, that suffering one. And this leaves us flailing and alone in our anguish, even feeling abandoned by God in the moments of the most intense torment. That's beautifully echoed in that call from the cross, my God, why have you abandoned me? And we all know we've gone through times when we felt abandoned in that way. But bringing a listening, attentive presence begins to free us from that either avoidant or trapped defensive self. Again, we can picture bringing a gentle, supportive hand that simply holds the tight fist of torment not trying to pry it loose from its defensive, terrified stance, but rather with a self reassuring, listening presence. We could even speak this quietly or even out loud to ourselves. I get it. I understand. I'm here for you. And as we do this, it allows a profound shift to start to take place within us. The shift from being identified as the wounded one to the spaciousness of who you are as the compassionate, listening presence. You're so much more grounded and vast than when you're caught up in that constricted space. And we start to reach into that when we bring this listening, non judgmental presence. And then from here, you can listen into the presence of who you are as the listener. Listen to the silent, compassionate wisdom that is in you, that has room for it all. These layers in ourselves that we're not used to attuning to or listening to. It's profound wisdom of our true nature. It's just waiting for us to reach in and listen, feel our way into what is possible. And this compassion that we start to find for ourselves starts to be available. But we recognize that this compassionate, wise, caring presence is more who you are than the constricted, terrified one. And from here, you can listen to the silence that you're held in, the silence of the compassionate presence of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. All is held in tenderness and compassion here. And we start to know this experientially. I mean, just imagine we are held in and one with a presence so encompassing, so accepting, that there's no trying to solve the problem of me, merely a holding in the space of deep, compassionate, abiding listening, a space that heals more deeply than mere fixes or taming of circumstances, one whose depths honors our own depths, never plastering over our wounds with cheap solutions. Such healing, such grace in the presence of listening silence, tender compassion, the ground of our being. In God, we live and move and ache and heal and love and laugh and fail and fall and rise and breathe and have our being. What grace!